Welcome to Sandy's Paddling Podcast. Today's episode is going to be co-hosted by Chris Issendorf, and he will help me interview Serge Corbin and Jeff Kolka. If you don't know who Serge Corbin and Jeff Kolka are, and you also may not know what the Triple Crown of racing is, please go back to the previous episode and listen, where Chris gives us a description on both of those. But this episode's pretty long, so we're going to get right into it. I'm here with Jeff Kolka and Serge Corbin, who are legends of really marathon racing in the U.S., but also, since Serge is from Canada, internationally as well. So you've won together 9 times, is that correct?
Correct.
And you can't even remember how many AuSables you've done, but a whole lot.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of go over how you both got into racing? Because I know you raced with your brother, Serge, and that's how you kind of were introduced.
I raced with my brother 5-6 years. And after that, I get other partner from all over, from Canada, from the States.
How old were you when you raced with him?
I start, I think my first Classique, I had 16. Finished second the first year, and after that we win it for a couple of years in a row.
And how long had he been paddling before you started racing with him?
Maybe 6-7 years before me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much older is he than you?
12 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Serge, you told me a story the other day about how you started paddling, and it was just because Claude needed a training partner. Right?
Yeah. I was young, and he started paddling with one of his buddy, and we don't have the C1 at that time, and he put the rocks all the time to go do his training every night. So I was on the side of the river. He said, "Hey, come with me a little bit." Okay, I go. I was by my buddy there, and I start paddling a little bit in the back with a rock in the back, plus me there. And I really enjoyed that, and we start to race some little race for...
Did y'all live near the river?
Yeah, it was just side the river.
Oh,
I was
okay.
always in the river. Even before I paddled, we were in the river every day. It just was a playground there for us.
Yeah.
Fishing.
And where did you grow up?
And Three Rivers, Cap de la Madeleine, Three Rivers, and Quebec City, close to Quebec City.
Okay. Yeah. And so how did you hear about, well, I guess we should first do, how did you get into canoe racing? Because it was through your dad.
Yes, through my father.
And he'd been racing a really long time.
Yeah, he was one of the local favorites around that area. Yeah, my dad started it, I can't remember, probably before it was a twinkle in his eye, but no, just kidding. Right. Edit. But I do remember him. This was a big thing in the local community, and stuff like that. And then actually, Alan Carr and Delbert Case were both kind of like uncles to me or something like that. And they lived right across the street from me, and they were the ones that won the first AuSable River Canoe Marathon. And I didn't know all this stuff till after the fact, because I was just a young pup, and later on they came along, and then my dad was always getting ready for this event, and I didn't know what was really going on. Then you started learning more and more what it was about. And then I remember him racing, and he was always placing pretty good, but he never won it, He had a lot of different seconds and stuff, and some different partners, but he never won it. So.
Now, did you ask him, "Hey, Dad, let's race together," or did he ask you?
He asked me, but I didn't want to.
I was going to say,
my dad has a certain personality that most people can't handle. He's kind of rough on the edges, but he's got a real big heart. Mm-hmm. And I think to communicate or something like that, I'd say that the easiest way I could put it is basically Navy SEAL camp might be easier than living with my dad or paddling with him and anybody. But then when you were a son is even another step above.
Yeah.
But everybody that ever paddled with him, the next year they were the most improved paddler by far, and he had quite a big track record for that.
And how old were you when you paddled with him?
My first one was 20, going on 21. Just starting my first one. Yeah. And it's It was probably the most memorable one because it's a big event. All your life you thought about doing it and you wanted to place well or whatever. And And for my father, I don't know how this podcast is going to go, but sometimes he couldn't explain stuff. He'd get frustrated, and you'd have some altercation type stuff going on and stuff. And I remember we getting out and we're yelling at each other, a little bit, father son too close or type thing, and then I'm going like, geez, I just want to finish, and I wanted to try to get in the top 10 my first year. I wanted to really do that real bad, and my dad, you're going to have to edit this. Where's the beep? Jesus Christ, finish the son of a bitch. I'm tired of finishing the son of a bitch. That was the most positive thing I got the whole year from him. I'm going, oh, there's still some hope in there. But if you knew my dad, that's just the way he is. That's the way he was. But he was a local favorite for a lot of people, and it was, something else, to grow up underneath him. Yeah.
That's really neat. And where did you live?
I grew up most of my life in Grayling.
Okay.
I lived a couple other places for a little while, Detroit and then Pinconning for a few years, but most of my life was right in Grayling, the hometown of it. And Grayling and Oscoda, there's an area, that's where the races run.
Yeah.
It starts in Grayling, ends in Oscoda.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here, but how did you hear about I guess the AuSable was always part of the Triple Crown? Is that?
Well, what happened was you had General Clinton was going on its own, and you had the AuSable going on its own, and actually the Classique was the oldest of all three of the races, I believe, and that was a big thing, and somehow it started going off because my father would take off and go, and there was other races in Canada too. He'd take off and go and paddle them, and the Classique was one of the big ones that he went to back in the day too. So, in AuSable, as far as like him hearing it, I would say most likely when Claude brought you down, right?
Yeah.
His brother Claude come down. His brother Claude was one of the premier paddlers before Serge. Then Serge knocked his brother off the throne. So, sorry, Claude.
So how many races had y'all done together before coming down to the AuSable?
Oh, I came AuSable, I think I had 17.
Oh, wow.
So was early.
Yeah.
2-3 years, before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you think of the race?
Yeah, it was tough, it was long.
Yeah.
Especially the first one. But the first one I know before I left, Claude said my mom, and says, my mom, don't burn him. Because I was young. And then the race, we start with the Kellogg's brothers. And those guys was going really hard, and we followed them. We didn't know where to go, and we didn't check the river. Claude says, we have to follow them all night. I don't know where to go, so we just sprint and follow those guys. And in the morning, we didn't eat too much. And Claude says he turned around, but he told me that after, my face was kind of white or green or something, But I was feeling okay. I told him after the race, He said, okay, we stop and eat, Well, after that, we get lost.
Oh, no.
We went all over the place on the pond, and we finished like 30 minutes behind. But I think we can stay with them. But I was the first one. But I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Good. You were hooked, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, how did you hear about each other? Or I guess you had met sometime along the way.
Oh, yeah. We saw all the race. Everybody's at Cooperstown, the Classique.
Because you were finishing like second and third prior to racing with Serge, right? You had worked your way.
Yeah.
How many AuSables approximately had you done before racing with him?
I don't know if I've been around. I did like 22 total, I think it is now. And probably maybe 10.
10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or 12. 12 would be 12. And then I had 4 seconds in a row. I had 6 total, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah. No, it'd be, I had 5. I had 5 seconds in a row, is what I had. And then I started racing with Serge.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
He was the one that beat me.
If you can't beat them, join them.
And so you were Jeff were the bow man, right? And Serge was the stern man.
Yeah.
And is that where you were for your previous partners as well?
Serge has paddled a bow a lot. He paddles both ends, and I have too. And but previously, like in my early career, I paddled the stern more. Then I started paddling the bow. I took like a 4 or 5 year sabbatical because I had some back issues and stuff. And then I was starting to get back into it, and I met my one friend and started paddling. I took the bow, and then like Serge said, when we talked and stuff, he said he wanted to paddle stern and wanted me to paddle the bow, and that's the way we did it.
Did y'all ever try the opposite way to see how it would go? No?
No, we're going good
Just
enough. The one way
just
we're
on a
gonna
boat
change it.
yesterday. That'd be a boat yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. You were in the stern
Yes,
yesterday.
I was. Yeah.
How'd it go?
It went pretty good. It still went good. Yeah. Yep, and actually in the C4 too earlier this week.
Oh yeah, C4.
Yeah, it's the first time we've been together probably in about 20 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we paddled together in the C2. I hadn't been in the C2 hardly at all, and we paddled earlier this week at the training camp Chris had going on. And Chris says, "We got to get in the bow. We got to get you back together, and we got to get some films and stuff like that."
We had to get him back in the C2, and I ran a GoPro and got some great footage of it.
Well, great.
It was awesome.
Yeah, we're all bundled up like we're
Yeah.
freezing to death. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we made it.
Yeah.
So what did your training look like? Because you live in Canada, so how much training could you do together prior to the races?
We
Not a
didn't.
lot, no.
No.
We trained by ourselves and
Yep.
get.
We get together
Right.
and did it. I think the first year, didn't I come up for a few days one time, and that was it,
Yeah.
basically. Other than that, we basically just would meet at the races and go.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're busy and have lived quite a ways apart, so.
So you did mostly like C1 training prior to.
Yeah.
C1 and when you could, paddle C2. And you try to do as much as, you try to get in shape and you just had to do what you can do, you know what I mean?
Wow. That's
C1
impressive.
makes you tough.
I know, but it takes a special paddler to jump into a boat with someone that you don't have a lot of training with and mesh that well. That's awesome.
I think.
We were young.
Well, yeah.
It was easier.
There you go. That's a good one there. Yeah. It just seems like somehow, some ways, I think when you start to get to your pinnacle, if you can, it's a combination of things and you have the same common thought process and you become, more unified as a paddler and you understand, just doesn't take much. And he'd tell me a couple things and I try to pick up and learn real quick and it just clicked, you know what I mean? So I was very fortunate. I'm just going like, why didn't I learn this like 15 years before, you know what I mean? That we could do this stuff. But it was a good time and a great event and we had a good run.
Now, y'all broke the record fairly early on in racing together, right? Is that?
We almost broke the record our first year there. We almost broke, we shattered all the main records. And we didn't get to overall time because we had a headwind. You said so too, right? You think, Serge? There's a headwind that kept us from breaking it. At the very end towards the end of the race, we had to cross the ponds. We had to paddle in the white caps and stuff like that. And we didn't have high water that year or anything. We had, I think, medium water. I'm not sure. I still would like to look that all up. But we were clicking very well. Matter of fact, we were flying. It was crazy. I think that one we won by 30 or 35 minutes or something. That was our first one. And it took off from there. It just was clicking, you know what I mean? And sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. But it was clicking very well that year. So we won. We were the first team. We might have been the only team that won every point-to-point and every split time record the whole race.
Wow.
That year. We might have. I think we were the only ones. I'm not 100% though. At that time, the guy that used to keep the records, his name was John Cook, and he'd come up and after we won like 4 or 5 of them, John Cook would come up and congratulations, guys. If you guys win again, you'll set another record. And I go, what's that? And he says, it's the oldest combined age team to win the marathon. And so that meant we were leaving that fine young age he just talked about. Now we're getting old. So,
Out of all your years, do you have like a favorite race that just went really, really? I mean, guess they all had to go pretty well because you won, but were the like magical one that you thought that's the one?
It depends of years.
yeah.
Like the Classique, it's a nice race, but if it's rough, it's cold. Some years it's good, and Cooperstown is good too, and the marathon it's a good race too. They all have their good things.
Yeah. Did y'all race the Triple Crown usually together, or was that separated out?
No,
Yeah.
we got where we started paddling the Triple Crown as well together, yeah. Yeah, I remember it was at Cooper's down in Serge. Was it going for your 24th or 25th the one year? And I think it was, what was our last year, I think, that we did it? What was it? And guys from WCDU or whatever it is, CDO, and they come up and they'd interview you and ask you, what's the hardest thing about this? And I says, well, you won't be remembered. He's a race he's never lost, right? I says, you won't be remembered for winning with him. You'll be remembered if you lose with him, no. So there's no pressure at all. And we were both the old farts. We had about 20 years on everybody. But it was a great time, great run, and good time.
So, racing together, you two as a team, what was the hardest race you guys were ever in? Like, most competition, adversity, things going wrong, or a great race?
Classique,
way. Yep.
I got cramps the third day.
Yep.
We had, 3-4 minutes lead.
Yeah.
The portage, we have to slow down. It's always tough.
The first portage on the third day?
Second day.
Second day.
Okay.
After Grand-Mère, the long portage.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And he says, Jeff, you got to hold the boat. What do you mean hold the boat?
I was cramping.
He was all cramped right on up. Later on, he told me his eardrums were popping because they're cramping so bad. He'd never had that before in his life.
Wow.
And so that was a hard one. Yeah.
And so you guys gave away a bunch of time. Teams are catching up.
Yeah. Tried to stay with him and rode him most of the way in, and finally we couldn't. We were hanging there for a while, but he was just cramping. Just everything was just got him.
I
and then
couldn't hold my paddle.
Yeah, he couldn't even hang on to the paddle hardly. And the waves, we had some waves, and that's where I had like this apron system we put on, and it was this it's a stretchy type material, but I got myself locked right in there, and I pulled everything just as tight as I could so I could lock in the boat, the paddle, to hold, because he was just cramping, every which way, That was probably, I think, that was by far the hardest, for him by far, because like he said, my eardrums even popped.
And so, Sandy, I know you don't know, but the race that they're talking about, it's on a river, but it's more
it's
like
that huge lake that gets the giant rolling waves coming in. Yeah. I've seen video.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I have a definition. After you go to Canada, Texas, Michigan, all these guys, we have streams and creeks. Canada has a river.
Yeah.
And it's the size of like your lakes almost, and ponds, like your reservoir here, right?
Yeah.
That's not as big as a river. And there's current flowing every which way down it. I mean, that's just what the make of the beast does up there. There's a lot of different size rivers, don't get me wrong, but the St. Maurice is that way, and that's the one that they go on. So
I've never seen rapids that I had to paddle through like the ones I saw on the third day.
Oh,
at the Classique. Like a bell. Like you portage over the dam, you get to the bottom, and you look downstream. And we got to go out there, and you don't know. We had never been there before, so it's really hard to know where to go, right? And so, pretty treacherous.
And my first time to go there, I took my father, believe it or not, after all the stuff we went through, but I took him because he had been there before, and I just wanted to paddle it to learn it. And the third day, the first day on the starting line, the Prime Minister flew over in a helicopter. They started 100 teams, and the Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau at the time, flew over in a helicopter for
Trudeau's dad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't know that was his father. I didn't know that. Father. Okay, but anyways, the recent Prime Minister's father. Yeah. But I just goes, wow, this is pretty. If you've never seen the President of the United States come to one of these events, or whatever, so it was a pretty big event. And right on the starting line, my seat broke. So I plopped down crooked in the boat, and we went to St. Roch, I think that year, and there's about 5-6 hours of paddling and something like that. Is that about how far it is? Yep. And I remember I just had to sit crooked all day long, like that. And I went, that's no way to start the race. But I was just wanting to learn the race and do that. And then we're running the portages and stuff like that. And then back then they used to have log booms and filled with logs, because I used to float them down the river still. And so there would be stuff floating in the water, and you had to watch it, and you had to dodge them because you'd hit them with your boats. And we had like wood strip boats back then still. And I remember we had borrowed a Kevlar, one of the first ones from my partner that I had in Michigan. He loaned us his boat. And I remember the third day we go down, and my dad was pretty good in the boat. We started going down, all the guys are crossing the river back and forth to miss the rapids. Well, I'm looking, why don't you just go straight? Well, then you start going through them, and then there's these waves. You're in waves, you're tall, and you're just out of the water, and there's different sized boulders you're going by and all that, and we're going right through them, and I'm going like, holy cow, we made it, and that boat was just caving in around my feet. You could hear buckle, going back and forth. You know what I mean? I'm going, maybe this isn't such a good idea afterwards. I started to try to get out of the way, waves. My dad's, what the hell are you doing? Jesus Christ, we just made a bunch of time on them guys. Keep going. I was scared crapless, you know. I think we pushed our luck far enough, you know, but that's the way it was. And then we get down farther, and I thought he kind of knew the route, but they move the booms around too, and you don't know unless you study the maps, and even then it's kind of tricky. And I'm going, which way you go? No. Oh, the hell do I know? It's just the way my father was, you know what I mean? And we turned right around, and we went down and was running, and I was splashing myself with the water. And one of my friends, Laurent Richard, at the time, I didn't know him, and he come up, and his pit crew, we had to do a portage down by Trois River. In an island, an island, and I was splashing myself just to cool off. You know what I mean? That's what I used to do. And he thought I was drinking the water, and he said, "No, you can't drink the water." And he had his pit crew come back, and they spoke mostly French Canadian at the time. They didn't converse with a lot of English, and they brought me back some Pierre water, you know. And I've never had that before. And spit it out, something's wrong with it, you know. I didn't know no different, you know. But I remember that, and I become friends with Laurent after that race, and it was pretty cool. But a lot of people were very, really, very polite and accepting for you up there, and the hospitality was unbelievable. And I kept trying to get up there as much as I could after that. Yeah.
When you go to Canada, you're treated like a real athlete, being a canoe racer.
Yeah. I'd say that you got like God and the hockey players above you, and other than that, at the time back in the day, you were right up with the hockey player almost sometimes, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, you were treated very, very, very well. Once, especially if you got you were established somewhat whatsoever, you know what I mean? And it was funny because a lot of times I didn't hear them speak a lot of English, but then you'd hear, go Michigan, you know?
Yeah, I heard go Texas a lot.
Wow.
Oh yeah, they're still that way to this day.
And but it's changed a lot. It was a great time though. So it was a great race. It really was. You had the portage in front of people. And I remember with my father, the first year, there's an old portage. They don't portage is the same way now as a Grand Mare, and it was, 2/3, 3/4 of a mile or long, something like that. And the crowd would be, you know, as wide as this building like right now, but as far as you can see, and they'd part, right? And I'm going like, how do we know they just shouldn't part and send us around the block?
The wrong path, yeah.
We would never know the difference. You know? Here comes the Americans, send them around the block. I mean, you would never know. How could you know? You know what I mean? But they were all patting you on the back and all.
Wow.
Yeah, they just loved it. It was great. You know what I mean?
It's like the Tour de France.
Oh yeah. Seriously, it really was back in the day. I don't know how it is anymore, but I've heard that they've lost some of the pizzazz. But you know what I mean, hopefully you can get some of that back again, because it was just so cool to have that. You know what I mean, the people just loved it. And
how many racers were in the early days for that one?
Yeah, close to 100.
Yep. My first one was 100, and it varied in there, but then it started dropping a little bit. But that was the big race at the time, back in the day.
Yeah. How far is it from there to Michigan, the grueling?
To drive? Mm-hmm. About 15, 16 hours, roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
No, it's not too bad. But you got to go through Montreal.
How do you think racing has changed since the 70s to now?
Too many sports now, everybody can go.
Yeah, because it seems like there's
sport.
a lot fewer people that race in general. Because in Texas, we had a lot more people, especially for shorter races. There was like a big population of racers, and it kind of dwindled in probably the 90s. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that's the same as up there.
I think it kind of, you have everything ebbs and flows with stuff like that. And you got to get even in Grayling, we were kind of dwindling right down, and then all of a sudden some kids in high school or something, the locals, hey man, let's get in that, and they get working each other up, and next thing you know, that's what they decide to do after they get out of school, you know what I mean, and they'll start to get in. And actually, that's a couple of sections of racers we have, generations that have changed it, and it's little things like that does it. Some reason or some way you get that child involved, and it is a great family sport too. I mean, I will attest to that, and I've preached that for decades now. Been that long already, huh? But I grew up, my father would go to a canoe race on the weekends and everybody camp and hang out and you had a bonfire and adults used to have a few soda mooses and stuff like that. And the kids would be running around playing all day long and then finally go crash, get up, race the next day and do it again the next night or something like that. You know what I mean? Well, and that was your weekend, you know what I mean?
You both started with your family too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. When my dad, and actually traveling was great even then, just traveling around the state, you know what I mean? It was a great eye-opener. Other than that, probably would have never hardly left Grayling, So it was fun, and you got to get the youth back in there to change it up. And the technology's changed because, like, when you brought that up, we've both paddled a marathon with wooden paddles in wooden strip canoes and stuff like that. I mean, and nowadays, what? And I mean, the first canoe I paddled in probably weighed around 80 pounds plus, even though it was a wood strip canoe. All right, and
wow.
With my father.
That's heavy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Comparatively now, isn't it, huh? And then we had the wood paddles. I liked the wood paddles. They just were heavy comparatively.
Did y'all go through the phases of the extreme size paddles before they came back down to a normal?
I think I was using around a 9-inch paddle, even as a kid. You know what I mean? The width was, and that's pretty big. You know what I mean? When I didn't weigh 100 pounds dripping wet, you know what I mean? I was 5 foot tall. And then I had my little spurts finally, but even then, I'm not that big now. But I remember the wood paddles, and then, like, I think in Michigan, Verlin Kruger had the fiberglass blades with, like, the pole vault paddles and stuff like that. He started doing that, and then that got tweaked and modified, and then Greg Barton started making them paddles. But my dad used to get a lot of paddles from Canada, the wood paddles, because of Clement or whatever up there.
Clement, yeah.
Yeah, they were real good. He liked them, so when he went up there and raced, he'd get some more. But they were all straight back then, too. Then they started putting the bend in them, and things started changing. Things evolved that you wouldn't believe. Also, I remember growing up, the only seat that slid was the front seat. All right? That's all you had was the front seat slid, you know what I mean? And then you basically moved, and then now we have a rear slider. But I think the Baylor was a great big adventure when that came out finally, you know what I mean?
The seat?
And the Baylor too, to get the water out. The sliding rear seat and the Baylor are probably the two biggest things that really made a big difference for some stuff to trim the boat out. Where before you're just kind of stuck almost.
Right.
You know what I mean? You set it up, you couldn't adjust it too much for shallow or deep water. I mean, you could get deeper water, and then you'd slid, the guy in the bow would slide back, and that was all your adjustment you had. Where when you trim in the rear, it's even easier and better trimming overall, and so it's changed a lot.
Oh, and so we're talking to the guy who invented the rear sliding seat with the integrated foot brace to it, right? You and Brett came up with that. Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
I was with Brett, and Brett was a sprinter kayak. He was really fast, and it was hard to trim the boat, especially the V1. If it's too bar light, you don't get speed. So I said, Brett, you go too hard, or I have to make something, and because Brett was a really good sprinter, so he can go fast for 30 or 1 minute. But after that, he slowed down. The boat was good trim, but the time we can go fast was going, the boat was lift too much. So I said, I have to try something. I have some piece aluminum at home, and I start to work on that, and we went and tried that. Oh, wow, it's good, And since after that, we put that, tell that to Zevral, and then Bob says, okay, we'll try to make some tube for that. And
you reinvented.
Yeah,
well, to trim a canoe, that was like the Baylor was the first one, and that was like the biggest improvement to trim out a canoe that I can recall. And don't get me wrong, all the equipment all of a sudden got a lot lighter too, and with the carbon paddles and all that. So you have all the things going on. But what he had come up with is when you trim the boat out, I thought you were stuck. It didn't matter. You just paddle, the bow was up or down or whatever.
Do you kind of like scooch forward on your seat, go to the front of the seat to try and get the bow down a little bit in certain areas?
You would try to. That's all you could do. What I mean? I remember for first.
In the old days, Peterson at the Classic, when you get the rapids we talk about, he used a lug. Oh. My brother said he put a lug there the day before. So you get there and he put a lug to make sure to trim the boat. So you're going down the rapid, threw the lugs away.
No kidding. So the story I got from Brett was these guys designed that sliding foot brace, and they tried to keep it a secret. And they did for a couple races, but then the next year, like, one other person had it. because they peeked into the boat, and then the next year everybody had it.
It was a good thing.
Yeah.
So
wave.
I could be wrong, but the Corbin is a boat designed by you, right? Is that wrong?
Yeah. We
How
work
did
a
you
lot.
How did you get into that?
My brother, we build those strip boats, and we work a lot on that. And after that, we went with different boats and make with friends. We make a strip boats, and this one go good, so we just copy it. And
so the 95 Corbin is the one that a lot of really fast teams race these days, right? A lot of the Triple Crown races are won in a 95 Corbin, and I've never gotten like the real story. I know how you designed that boat, right? You laid up a really thick V1 and then had a guy grind down half of it until it. No, so this is what Brett told me. I got the story from Brett.
There was your first problem.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you come up with the 95?
so we had some plate to make different boat before, and my friend has some plate. I said, it's too big, and we want to make a boat narrower. So we just start to cut the plates, and my friend, he says, okay, I check all the things, supposed to be good. I say, no, it's not. I don't like it. It's too big. I have to cut. I was cutting the plates. And
The templates.
The templates
Right,
you
right.
use for a wood strip boat. You set up
The
templates,
stations,
and that's what it means.
Yeah.
I put a couple,
So
strips.
you were just
and
eyeballing it?
Yeah, just
Oh,
all
wow.
by. And I want to make a boat really narrow and make sure, And it took about 2 years before people really liked that boat. And after that, everybody wants that boat because it was really tippy early when people get in that boat. And
When I heard that, people didn't figure out that you want to kind of run that boat stern down. They're running it normal like a V1. You would tend to run flat or bow down, right? But the 95, you want to run it slightly stern down.
no, it depends with who's
Yeah,
sitting in the bow.
yeah.
And, if you have heavier guys on a bow, you don't need to slide too much. If you have a light guys like Jeff, we work together, I have to slide a lot, especially in the shallow. I have to slide forward.
Yeah,
Make sure the boat
I didn't feel you slide
not too much
today.
No, because you have a lot of weight in the bow, so
Okay.
the boat don't lift like if you have a light person in the front.
Okay.
You aren't picking it up good enough. Chris, no.
I'm trying to get that purple line out of the water,
The purple line, that was a good one.
Purple line,
That was
yeah.
great. That's a great show. No. Yeah, when you used to make the strip canoes and stuff like that, my father used to make like one almost every year before the race, and I built a lot of them when I was a child too. And as a matter of fact, we were talking earlier about the 16-foot canoes. That was a standard in Canada.
Yeah.
For the Classique was a 16-foot pro canoe, they called it. And my dad, we actually took and found out the formula they had through Verlin Kruger. He got it was 3.29 and 3/8, I think, or something like that. And I ended up taking our center template. We took a 16-footer and stretched it out. Is what we did to make that. And I made an amateur canoe at 17-foot with the formula, and we did that. And my brother and I used to race that a lot. So it was different, but it's you laying up strip by strip, stapling and gluing, and then you had to pull them staples, and you'd have holes in your hands from the back end of the can opener, the old V8 can openers. Like you pop the top in with a triangle. Most people out there won't even know what that is anymore. But it was a good time. And you sanded and sanded and sanded and put the glass on it, and we just had like polyester resins back then. We didn't have epoxies even. Things have evolved a lot. Now that I think about it. Ooh.
How long did that boat last you? How many racing seasons?
It could last several years, but it was more prone to breaking very easily. You could punch a hole in it a lot easier than the carbon boat and everything, but you could make them last. But I used to have to patch a lot of them too, and it'd take like a disc grinder's what I used to do it with, and I'd grind a spot where the cloth was bad or where it was cracked. And then I'd take and actually feather like a 2-inch or 3-inch real tapered feather out. So I put my cloth on over top, and it would adhere. Then I could feather them edges back down, and I'd have a thin layer tapered back together, and you wouldn't hardly tell what I did. But it took me a while to figure that out. My dad used to always make me do that and then try to paint them. And then like the cloth wouldn't be filled, so you had to hand paint. And then the little bubbles, all that stuff,
once
well, the
you get
paint
bubbles,
would move on you.
right.
And it was very frustrating. But it's the stuff you kind of did back in the day. You mix up a hot batch and make like the bow and stern. You had boards and forms on there, and you crisscross like in the stern, it crisscross like this here, and you take a back saw and cut this way and then cut this way to each tie down, and you have a nice point at the end. Sand and rasp that, and they made all your thwarts, and your cross braces were all made out of pine or something. The canoe was either redwood or cedar is what we used to use a lot of. And it was a process, and it was kind of like you had wooden gunnels. I mean, the whole boats they weighed more because of the whole process, but they're kind of a thing of beauty too, because then you could take, if you wanted to make a clearer type boat, you could layer the colors of the wood that you had maybe, but you used to have to rip all the strips down, on a table saw, and it's just what we did. It's different.
Were those boats like susceptible to warping?
No, I don't think they warped too bad. I think they could be if you had like left them out in the snow to get on them or something. And that stuff, you could have that trouble like that. The weight on them, you would, finally cave, the moisture and all that. But if you took care of them at all, they would last pretty good. But they were not the carbon materials and Kevlar right now. They're far superior in so many ways.
Well, I don't think if we had a strip boat today, we will never finish the race.
See, that's a prime example. You grinded it out.
Because they were light. The last couple strip boat was like 25, 26 pounds. I remember. It was so light you can see through the cedars and the glass.
No kidding.
And they were only using like 4-ounce cloth. I think Jensen used to use like 4-ounce cloth.
That's what we did too.
But the trouble is now it's even more susceptible to being, breaking up on you.
So you guys have done a lot of racing outside of Triple Crown racing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are some fun races you guys used to do outside of the big three?
There's different kinds of things. We went to Thailand and raced swan boats, raced some Voyager canoes.
Hawaii.
Yep.
Yeah, you did the Molokai Ho.
Yeah. Not only did it, but won it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
He did.
Race.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about this Thailand stuff the other day, and is that like the big, what do they call them, war canoes?
Well, the war, not what we were in. You had to be indigenous or native. They wouldn't let you in it otherwise.
Okay.
And they were 40 to 60 paddlers in them.
50 for them. Yeah. Us was 22.
22 for the swans. Yeah. But then they had
50
big war
for
canoes.
the other one.
Yeah. And it was cool. It was cool to see them paddle. But they're all like professional teams. That's what they train for. They're national teams, and the countries that come in all from all over the world. Australia, Britain, Japan, Myanmar, and all these other countries that come down and race, their boats and stuff. But the swan boats were like a teak boat. It probably weighed 1,000, 2,000 pounds before it even got in the water.
No.
Before it got to the water, and then it would actually leak for a while. Then it would swell up and slow down on the leak a little bit. But you still had water in all the time. Then you had to use a teak wooden paddle, and they didn't have no T top to them, so you had to grab them in a different way. And you also, when you're in the barrel, there's a barrel, and when you grab them, you grab one or two in field, because one could be like half the weight of the other one. That's the one you took, because all you were doing was a sprint. Was it 2,000 meters? How far was it? Probably something like that,
1,000, I think.
Yeah. And but you had a big, heavy boat, and you had to get it going and sprint. It was a lot of fun. A lot of good stuff to learn.
And so how did y'all get the invite to go do that?
Everett Crozier invited us to go and do that. So
you know a guys live there. Remember his name?
Green.
Green.
Glenn Green.
Glenn Green. Yeah.
Glenn Green. Yeah. His wife was from Thailand, and he was like the coach of the team. And I do remember the first time we were there, he says, "All right, everybody sprint to this buoy, right?" And so you sprint to the buoy, and he says, "All right, go to the next one." I'm going, "Hold it, dude. You just said sprint to this one. The tank's empty. It's not happening." And then when you're pulling in them, you don't realize with
same size all the time.
Yeah, on the same side, the guys that, especially when they're doubled up, and the boat's really heavy, and when you get 22 guys in a canoe, and it's already almost 1,000 pounds. When you pull, it's like pulling the house. It's like hard to pull, and so you're pulling as hard as you can. You actually learn how to do a pasting as you get doing it together. And you can start it from the front all you want, but you'd hardly move in that thing because you're just pulling the car, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're just trying to set a pace, let everyone in the boat catch up and move it up together.
You're paddling hard, but you learn that you're just not going to start it by yourself. That's the bottom line. There's just no way. There's too much weight, I mean, so you're not going to. And that's you kind of learn. But like what he said, go to that buoy and then keep going another, hold it. No, I just emptied the tank. He said, go to that one all out. I'm done, you know what I mean? Just give me a minute or two to recover, and then we'll go again. But I remember that, and I was like, heck. But it was a good experience, and it was a lot of different cultures we've seen and learned. We did that for a while. Thailand was good. I did a Saskatchewan canoe quest, going across in the Voyager canoe. We paddled across Saskatchewan. It was their centennial.
Voyager canoe, that's 6?
Yes, there was 6 in it. It's a northern version, they call it. Okay. They're around 25 foot long, 4 foot wide.
Okay.
They're like 250, 300 pounds.
I mean, that seems really short for 6 people to be in, considering our 6
Do you sit next to each other side by side, or do you?
We didn't. We would sit 6 in individual seats, and the guys in the middle had to slide clear across.
Wide.
Oh yeah, and then they'd wear their britches right out doing it. Yeah, it's some good times. And it's also led to a lot of stuff, like we got to go to Thailand, Hawaii, and stuff. Canoe racing has been very good to us, I feel. And the community, the people, I mean, doesn't seem to matter where I've traveled or how I have. The canoe racing community, the people in it are some of the best people on earth. You know, I mean, there's just no doubt about it, all the way around. And it's so cool to see that. I mean, it's a great feeling. It doesn't matter where you go. There's a lot of cool people. Now, canoe racing has been a good sport, and I've been fortunate, you know what I mean? So a lot of people try very hard, and they don't succeed. You know what I mean? And success isn't always whether or not, I have kind of a definition. A winner isn't always the guy that takes first all the time. It's a guy that can persevere and come over through adversity and still succeeds at the mission that they were trying to do.
Yeah, reaching your goals.
Yes,
and it's not everyone's goal to win.
No, yeah, that's the true statement. I mean, my goal is always try to win the marathon. You know what I mean? My race, my hometown race.
I think Serge's goal was always to try to win.
Yeah, it was. It was.
He doesn't just try.
But it's what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it can be set in different things, you know what I mean? Because you just everybody you wish them the best luck. They go through the adversity. They become stronger, tougher people, more confident in themselves. And generally that leads to everything in life that helps them, that they can overcome or do something in life because they've overcome this other obstacle and they went through some stuff to do it. So it's not given to you. You earned it. Nobody can take it from you once you've accomplished that stuff. And I think that's a good life lesson, I guess, for anybody. I got to tell everybody thank you very much for the hospitality I've seen and received down here. It's been great. It is something I'm going to look forward to doing it if I can more often come down this area. It's been great.
Don't come July through September.
No.
That is not the right time.
No, Michigan has really good weather then.
Exactly.
That's where you want to be at them months.
The best time to come to Texas is like the second Thursday in June.
What do you need, a pit crew?
No. I'd rather see you in a boat, man. I would rather see you in a boat.
I don't know if that's my cup of tea, man.
Hey, I got Serge to do a race today. Like, he might call next year looking for a partner. Right, Serge?
We'll see.
Well, maybe we'll borrow your canoe next year and we'll race it if we're here.
I would love to see that. I will give you my canoe just so that I can see that.
So do you want to start with that question then?
Yeah.
You start with the question for the audience?
There were a couple questions,
Yep.
but I'll start with what your training schedule kind of was, or what you used to do to get ready for the races.
You want to start, Serge? Go. Okay. Basically, I get up, go to work, get home as fast as I can. Try to set up something where I could get a pickup if it's the fans or Wakeleys. Jump in the canoe, paddle down to there, come back home, finish doing the stuff I have to do around the house. Something along them lines. Sometimes you'd paddle up, down, or go out to the lake. But most of the time it was just learning the river and going down the river. And sometimes you'd paddle 2 or 3 hours, you know what I mean, some evenings or something like that. Then on the weekends, you tried to get the longer ones in too, to keep learning the river and just keep tweaking what you could.
Did you do much night training? I mean, this is more
No,
of a
I
general
really didn't.
AuSable.
I really didn't.
Just memorize it during the day and
That's kind of what you tried. That's what I tried to do. I remember the stories go like one of my first years. They used to have the boats right up beside what used to be Ray's Canoe River. That's where it starts at, and we used to have 6-volt batteries and the old hand lanterns on top, and they mounted them up and they had a switch to them.
That's lightweight.
And I remember, yeah, there you go. That's lightweight. That's right. Here we go again, right? And I remember I was in the stern that year, and we were running. We were ahead of John Baker and Kim Brown, and we come out of town hot and hard, and we were running down, and we got down below Wakely's, and I said to my partner in the bow, I said, "Turn the light on for me, would you?" He mumbled a little bit something like that because I couldn't see to start the corner. It's really twisty, and there's high banks, and the tree line, there's no stars. You can't see anything. I said, turn the light on. Well, I got to see to start the boat or whatever. And he goes like, he mumbled something again, and the third time I said it, he says, "It is on." You know what I mean? Somebody had turned the light on, and the battery had drained. You know what I mean? And that's when I said, I got to learn this river a little bit better. Hard lesson to learn, right? So there's stuff like that you had happen, you know what I mean, and you overcome that again. You learn, okay, next year I'm not going to let this happen to me again. So you start learning the river. In the wintertime up there, a lot of times, it wasn't at first. We didn't have C1s like he said in the beginning. I remember as a kid carrying that canoe I told you I built across the farmer's field because it flooded in a sandbag, and I'd throw it in the front or something like that and paddle it around. That's all I had, you know what I mean? I was too far. We had a bay by us, and another river was quite a ways away, and I didn't drive a car. I had a vehicle at the time. That was one of the things I used to do back in the day. And you'd carry it in the wind. The wind's blowing you all around. I mean, the canoe weighed almost, 2/3 of my weight when I was 100-pounders dripping wet. You know what I mean? Carried it across the field and put it in and try to paddle it, along the ditches where they'd flooded on the farmers' fields. It was stuff like that you did. And as you got older, you got more regimented. You try to get the hours in. You get your various hours in, and you try to improve on your times. And I never really didn't know till Bruce talked about time trials and stuff like that. I never had, or even where you 30-second drills or a minute, 2-minute drills on off or something like that. Like I just fartlicked basically is what I always had done before. And even Bill and I, that's all we did was really fartlicked. And Bruce told us about, you guys need to try this too, because that's what they're used to doing for the Olympics. So we started doing a little bit of that too.
What is fartlick?
Fartlicking is basically you pick out a point or something, and then you paddle as hard as you can to that point.
Okay.
Take a certain tree. Let's see the cedar sweeping down across the river. This is where we're going to paddle as hard as we can to that. And it's generally a set distance, but it's nothing measured out exactly. You just learn to go as hard as you can to it.
And then you kind of paddle till you recover, and then pick another spot to go hard to.
Yeah, and you did something like that. And sometimes, like all the small races that we had, that was pretty conducive to help our situation, because most of our races are only a couple hours long. And so it was like a pretty hard sprint most of the time, the whole race to maintain and do stuff. But you'd set up with your partner, and I remember I used to hate answering machines. This is how far back it was, and you hated them, right? But then when you finally got one, because I remember so many times you drive somewhere to meet somebody to do something, and they wouldn't show up. Well, I tried to get a hold of you. We didn't have the convenience that you have nowadays, and then you'd be mad at them for a while. What the heck? I just sat there, and time was of essence back then too. And then they got an answer machine. At least they could leave you a message or something. Hey, I can't make it until later or something. Blah blah blah. It's just a part of the evolution of doing this stuff. But you try to get out, you tried to paddle, you tried to learn the river, is what I did for me in my situation. Then I also tried to learn the other things that started getting involved, like learning a little bit of riding the wave. And my father taught me a little bit of that behind a motorboat one time down on the Cucaulin River down by Bay City. And he kept having the guy just bump it up. And I'm sitting there looking down at the prop. I thought, I didn't know, and I'm paddling right there. And we're sitting there and we're going along. And we're moving along pretty good. And until the guy really gunned it before he dropped us, we were staying there the whole time. My dad knew what to do. I didn't know what I was doing. There's stuff that you learn and you just put it together. But I don't know what else I could say for me in particular, training.
Did y'all have many races, like short races locally that you would do a lot of?
Not necessarily locally, but in the state of Michigan, the Michigan Canoe Racing Association was very strong. We'd had 12, 14, 16 races a year, short ones. And that I think really helped us with a lot of stuff for us, You know, I mean, you train all week long, and then you jump in. But once you got your base in, then you work more for speed than anything else. And then, I don't know, Serge, you had some other different regiments you used to do once in a while too. Do you want to talk about what you used to do?
Yeah, we had some race like you do, Quebec. We have like maybe 15 race a year. Sometimes 2 race on the weekend, 1 race one day, and you have to drive, get the other one.
Wow.
So that was fun. Maybe even 20 race a year. You get in shape, making race like that. But we didn't have a special training. We just went, and it was natural. We know the shallow water is there. You have to pick up the boat, but we start the interval late. I was with Jeff, but before we just went hard, like
natural intervals.
Natural interval.
Yeah.
It's the fartlek kind of thing.
Keep the boat popped.
Yeah, fartlek type of thing,
Yeah. So in order to keep like a marathon pro boat canoe going good, you have to go hard. Right? Or you have to be feeling the boat and you want it to glide, but you're doing intervals all the time.
Tension of the
Yes. Yeah. You got to overcome the bottom. You're fighting the bottom the whole time, right? And like you're paddling, adjusting to the depth and trying to keep the boat trim. So you're having to go hard a lot. Natural intervals.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do? No.
Not everybody does it that way, Jeff.
It's funny. You actually had to learn how to not do certain things to help the boat move better too. You learn it ain't the rah totally. I mean, if you aren't making the canoe move, it doesn't matter how hard, you're just stirring the water. And there's little things that you try to learn and pick up through the years, but I don't know how to explain it. Like my father couldn't explain it what he wanted, you know what I mean? But then you start seeing it and feeling it in the canoe. And I used to call it like a mud stroke for us in Michigan. And we didn't have a real fast stroke rate where you guys used a more a faster, very fast tempo. And then you learn to combine them. Is what you kind of do for certain situations.
Now, are the rivers in Canada mostly deeper or bigger, or?
Mostly deeper, but we have some shallow. If you go
Shawinigan River,
upstream.
Shawinigan River, we went upstream on that one day. Yeah, that's small.
Yeah,
they have some small ones, 2 feeder streams.
Okay, because most of the rivers in Michigan are pretty small, right?
Yes, most of them.
And shallow.
Yeah. I nicknamed it the mud stroke basically in 1988, the year after I paddled my father, which was more of a lesson learning process. And it's a good thing I ran that year because that's where I got my conditioning from, because we didn't get a lot of paddling in except for 2 weeks before the marathon. We paddled every night. I worked from 7 to 3:30. We'd jump in the boat, getting going. We get done at 10 o'clock or later at night. We'd paddle 4 hours from town to Luzerne Park, 4.5 hours for 2 weeks in a row. And then I got like the last day off for the race. And that was how it was for me. For my dad, it was fine because he already had the muscle structure to do all that. So that tuned him in. It just wiped me out. But it was an interesting thing. And the mud stroke, I called it later on with my partner the next year. He was asking me, and basically you plant the paddle in almost like a post, and it's a slower stroke, and you transfer your weight on it and you pull the boat forward. But the paddle's like sticking like it's in mud. It isn't just going through the water. Remember I was telling you about the cavitation? You're eliminating all forms of cavitation. You're sticking it in there and you're pulling yourself past it. And it's like sticking it, pretend you're in mud, if you can get that feeling. And there's different variations of it. Some can be real long and some can be quicker. But you're still sticking that blade in like it's sticking almost in mud, and then you pull yourself past it. And that's why I nicknamed the mud stroke for my one partner that year. I called it the mud stroke with him. Because a lot of times we used to only paddle 65 strokes a minute, and we still would make the boat fly. All right. And then you learn later to pick up different stroke rates and change up. And the blades got narrower, all these things, because they were 9-10-inch blades early. And,
shorter.
Yep, short. Oh, yeah, 52 inches. 52. 1993. So it's just different things that was my definition to help somebody analyze in their mind when they stuck the paddle in the water, what you're trying to grab. And it was a slower stroke rate. A good way to try to feel it right now is choke way up on the handle, stick that paddle in there and pull yourself and see how it feels. You'll feel the mud then that I'm talking about. Only about a foot apart. Try that. Just stick it in there and take one stroke at a time. Just see, and that's the mud feeling. Yep. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but.
So how did your stroke change after paddling with Serge?
Well, it was already evolving, but then like Serge had a faster tempo, and then he taught me some things like, in certain conditions we want to use this and that. And I can tell you a quick story. The first year I worked on getting the fast tempo, and so I got fast tempo. That's all I did was a fast tempo, tick, 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 tick. We were just clicking right along. And then we get in the Classique that year in the third day, and there's a headwind, and Serge says, "Jeff, use your long hard stroke." I'm going, "Holy crap, I don't know if I can do it anymore." He says, "They can't do that. Do your long hard stroke." And we just started walking away, but I'm going, "I don't know if I can either." I was to win the race, That's funny, but he knew what to do at the time and when and how. So that was, you learn, you learn to evolve and improve and get more efficient.
Well, and you get good at all the strokes, right?
Well, there's variations, yes. That's what it is. You have to get good with, there's at least 3 basic strokes, all right? You have a power phase for starting and going over waves or whatever, finishing. And then you have a quicker stroke. If you get the boat up and gliding, you can maintain the boat's glide with a quick stroke if you can. Then you have the grinder stroke where it's a little bit of mud and the quick stroke to reel in another team. So you're trying to get the boat hull speed even faster than what you would just normally, and you're trying to reel in that other team. So it's in between some of them. That's 3 basics. There's even more than that, I guess. But when
you get older, you don't use the quick stroke. Long stroke.
I remember the one spring you come in, and Rod and Ryan Halstead were a couple young kids up and coming in there, and they were real fast, right? And we jumped in the boat. We hadn't been in the boat. Neither one of us really had paddled, I think, that year at all even. And we jumped in the boat. It was like April when you come back through from working on the canoes, and we're going down river. They want to go to McMaster's. Oh, that's a long day just to start the first day, And so we take off, and them guys are just flying for a while. Then pretty soon we reel them in, and next thing you know, they're not hanging with us anymore. But we were just taking a really steady, good stroke, making the boat glide. And with all the punching speed they had, they just didn't get the gist of it all, And they're going like, them guys don't even have to train, and they'll still take 3rd or 4th in the race.
What was your other question about the power surge? You wanted to know how?
The blades.
Yeah, the blades. Yeah. Well, I was making my own blade. When we had those woods blades, works on that. And Bruce came with some carbon blades, but they were kind of straight. And, we didn't really like the shape, but they were light. So everybody went at that. And Bob started to make some. Bob Zeverall make some. And then I went with him. And I said, "Hey, Bob, we should try that. And I think his idea, and Greg also. Greg came on the power surge too. Give him an idea. We could do some concave a little bit, and we can use that a little bit an hour and have a good grab.
I see.
About you using like the narrow.
Yeah, when we were stroking really fast, maybe 8-inch.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's the other opposite. I like it wider and we go slower. Yeah.
Well, originally they didn't allow any concavity or anything to the blades originally for a long time, and then that somehow got opened up, and then they did. So that changed a lot of stuff. I remember when they first coming out with it, I'm going like, they're going to get a 7-inch paddle or a 6-inch paddle eventually, because like a kayak paddle, the blade is so much narrower, but the way it's shaped, the trouble is how they make it enter smoothly and all that
smooth,
for a single blade and
get out.
Yep, and get out.
Not do the wiggle thing through
Yeah. So it was interesting how that evolved too. There's another part of the racing history that's evolved over the years. I wonder what Tom thought about some of that stuff even over all the years, how things have changed, haven't they?
I did have a question about the year that you set the record that held for so long with Solomon. What was that race like for the AuSable?
Tell more than I know, I think, on that race.
Basically, we had like real high water come in that year, and that was part of the reasoning for it. They were the premier team anyways. But the high water definitely helped. That year, I would say, was one of the big ones. Just like the overall time, is tricky to say. You need to also figure out the water levels somehow, because like any river, when it's at flood stage, you know what I mean. And the AuSable was actually where the race canoe river is. They had to sandbag that part of the building because the water was up there. And I had my younger brother Ted paddle with me, and he's taller than me, but I remember he was almost having a duck under like Rayburn's Bridge, and we've never seen it in my entire life like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, the water was that high.
And how many races had you raced with Solomon before that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I know I did the Classic with him a few years.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't the first time you were with him in a boat?
No.
Then
No, they'd had raced together a few times before. Yeah.
How far apart do y'all live?
That's a big
long ways.
He lives in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's about 30
But the
hours.
first year, Solomon asked me, was supposed to race. I had a problem with the shoulder. I was not supposed to race that year, so I started the shop also, 1985, I think. And Solomon came. He was supposed to race with one of my friend, Richard Tetro.
Yep, I remember
And he
Richard.
hurt the shoulder. So Solomon said, "Hey, I took my plane ticket, will be after New York." You know, he was there for a month and a half, I think. And he came at my shop. "Hey, sir, if you have time, you can go paddling." I said, "My shoulder is sore, and I don't think I can paddle and all that." And I went with him an hour, and another day, 2 hours. And I said, "Hey, you want to come with me in New York for fun?" I said, "For fun, Solomon?" I said, "I have nobody, you know." So I said, "Okay, we'll train and we'll try and we'll just go for." But we had a really good race. I remember Brett was there with Nick Bauer, and they had the V1. They just came out in Kevlars, and they had Greg paddles. We had wood paddles. We had we had the all different boats, but the old boat is really good and really shallow. And that year was really shallow. So we had to start. They start faster than us, and we followed them in a creek, the half hour, and they kind of slowed down, and we passed ahead, and those guys was hitting more the rocks than we hit because the boat was wider. The boat we had was easy in the shallow, so we get the lead, and we pass over the thing. You can hear the rocks behind.
Oh.
And Nick was very light, was 135 pound, Brett maybe 175, but so we went and we grind, and we get after Goodyear. So we get the lead there in the very shallow water, and so we get to the bridge after that. There's a bridge, a highway, and we hear Brett behind. "Serge, wait for us!" I say, "Solomon," I say, "I can keep that pace to the end, you know, if we keep going this way." Because my shoulder was really sore. At that time, I get a surgery, but we did a very good race. We finished I think we had 25 minutes ahead, and it was easy race, but we had fun.
Nice.
Maybe I had 60 hours.
Yeah.
And so that led into you guys racing the marathon together?
Yeah, after that, I think a few years, I didn't race with Solomon, and I come back after.
Yep.
After.
And then you raced again later in
Solomon,
94 and stuff like that. You
yeah.
guys did race previously, to that.
Well, that record held for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the record of
Oh, yeah.
Solomon.
Well, Solomon, actually, the year that we were running in 96, we were running real good times, right? And we're at 5 channels, and Solomon's, "Come on, Jeff. Come on, Serge." He says, "Go, go, go." He says, "But not too fast." Because we were at a record, but not too fast. He put a good twist on it. It was funny. You know, he's up on the thing cheering us on.
Tommy asked about training. What kind of training does a premier team do? And I've asked you that question. I've asked Serge that question. Yeah, we hadn't heard from Serge, but I have heard from Serge. And what I heard was when he and his brother first started, they were getting 600 hours a year.
Wow.
Well, they put a lot of time in the boat.
A lot
didn't
of
you?
time. Yeah.
A lot of time, right? And
A lot of fishing, too.
Well, I mean, you have to feed yourself,
Yeah.
right? You know, you got to eat.
Yeah.
Because
and
you're not
it's-
paddling in the winter, right? It's cold.
We start in February using my brother.
I got a video from
Yeah.
Christoph yesterday of him paddling in icebergs. Yes. So
The boats get heavy then, too, even the new ones.
they get covered in everything's
Right,
covered
everything
in ice.
gets ice.
And
Iced up, yeah.
they're wearing full dry suits.
Yeah, but I don't think they had that kind of technology
no.
20
Back in the day.
Back
No,
then,
30
no.
years.
Yeah, what were you having? Just big down jackets
Yeah.
and pants?
We don't want to tip over. Stay up.
Yeah, don't go over.
No, big boots.
Bear skins.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Caribou.
Oh, caribou, is that the...
Yeah.
I know a lot of times when it's cold, like early training, I don't really care to paddle minimum or maximum 2 hours because you just start to get cold. If you have a cover for the boat, it can keep you warmer as well. It'll help. I mean,
So how many hours per week in the winter do you think y'all are training or were training?
I didn't paddle a lot during the winter. I'd cross country ski, or a lot of times I'd be hunting or something,
Yeah.
and working or whatever. But then once you got caught, it started out with cross country skiing in the 80s. Is when I started that a little bit, and that helped transition with a lot of stuff. You just made your transition into canoeing so much easier. It's amazing because you're still using some of the similar muscles.
Right, it's the same lats. And...
You know, and you do other things, I guess. Like I remember, after work, a couple things I did. Just a stupid little thing I do, like 10 pull-ups, 10 chin-ups, 50 or 100 push-ups, and 50, 100 sit-ups or something. You know what I mean? And I used to do, because my back was bad, so I used to do sit-ups. They said they're supposed to be good for your back, but my legs were straight, so that was really good for me to do, and I didn't know no different. You know, at the time, they didn't talk about the crunches and different things like that. They didn't have the expertise and knowledge that like almost everybody has now for physical training. You know what I mean? You just did what you could, when you could, while you could, you know. And, we play like basketball, too, a little bit, do that.
Yeah, so you're
just for an exercise. So
you are already in good shape by the time.
You try to get in some sort of shape, yeah. But paddling was a different shape than all. But the cross-country skiing was the best one, I think, for transition by far. And then especially when they come up with the skating thing, you know, that was even nicer. You just get step out and glide. Once you get the technique down a little bit, it's a lot of fun then. And you just double pull and...
I'm doing the math on 600 hours.
Yeah, but that was when I started with my brother. It was just... the more you do hours, you'll be better. And what that time was that, you know, and all the team around, they were training, you know, 6, 7, 8 hours, 3 days in a row, and was that. And we didn't have a lot of race the year we did a lot of hours like that. We didn't have those, that association.
Right.
And we have like 3, 4 big races. So in the weekend, we can put a lot of hours in.
Because nowadays, at least, I mean, not so much in Texas, but up north, there's a race every weekend.
Yep.
Right, and
Pretty
so
much.
that plays into your training.
Yes. Oh yeah.
If you have they're intense.
When the
Those
summer
races are
starts,
really
you
intense.
just do the race and keep training a little bit during the week.
Well, it is. You when you have to compete, you're competing, right? It ain't. I'm going to go out and lollygag this or that. No, I'm not going to let that happen. And it brings you out of whatever you didn't want to maybe do in the beginning if you're going to race for something.
Being competitive. Being competitive in a race is the best training. Like,
yes.
Not letting them go just because you don't feel like it. You know, like stay with them. Don't let them get away.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll slow down.
I want to give a big shout out to all the people that help us be able to do that. You know, your family and friends and your pit crew. Holy cow. Every one of us that race know how important our pit crew is. They're our lifeline to everything, and a lot of times they don't get a lot of the glory, but I commend them. Yeah, and when they pitted for me in the marathon, they earned their wings. they got their pass upstairs.
Did y'all have different pit crews over the years y'all raced together, or did you have a lot of the same?
No, we had pretty much the same. Serge and I had pretty much the same pit crews. They were always. I had a good friend, Kurt, and my brother Scott, and then there was other involved as well, but they were the two main guys, but the rest of them were in there involved too. But we were very fortunate. And Serge had friends there too that were there. And
how big was your entourage that was helping?
We kept that, you know, like the family type thing or something like that, but it got pretty big. Like my aunt and uncle used to have a big feed and stuff like that, and they got the big thing going on where they'd have a big feed going on for a while. The week before they'd have like celebrations and a dinner every night or something, and that was part of that gig. I mean, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on as a big clique. But your entourage, basically, you know, very fortunate to have a lot of people support you and want that. But your immediate thing was just basically your family and friends, because that's, you know what I mean. And everybody kind of, whoever worked, they all knew what their role was for the most part. You know what I mean? But and it's important to have all that.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Kurt. He fed for me last year. That dude is great.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
he is.
He's awesome. I used to say, hit the hole on. We're coming back full tilt, and there's a little hole behind me in the front, and you hear sploosh, and you but we never missed a stroke. But for him to hit the hole, because it's so hard to get right behind the guy, like a bow paddler, I'm coming in full tilt right beside him. He's got to step in and then get back because of the center of the canoe. But they would do that. Very fortunate. Every pit person I know, for the most part, almost has that same attitude. They're all out 100% in, and we wouldn't be able to do what we could do if it wasn't for them. So.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me.
You're more than welcome, and thank you very much for
having
us.
Especially last minute, like earlier this afternoon. Oh, by the way.
Well, that's what we need to do. If we can help promote the sport, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, no,
I
love getting the stories recorded for posterity and the next generation.
Yeah, and we got to bring it in. We got to get new blood. So all you kids, get out there and get off your phones, go out and have some fun.
Get on the river.
Do the real thing. Smell it, feel it, taste it. There's nothing better than coming home and taking the chill out of your bones with a hot shower. Because I went swimming in the AuSable.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.